Hello, everyone. This is Wes, and today I'm going to be trying something a little bit different. This is a new segment called Talking the Red, in which I show you one of my fights in real time to kind of discuss the reasoning behind my Red Mage style of play. It's something that I've had requested a few times through various Discords. And rather than talk about theory crafting and the numbers and, just giving you a set rotation to follow, I've had a couple requests to really kind of get into the thought process of why I make certain decisions during gameplay. This is really kind of up my alley. I've never been much of a theory crafter or a numbers guy. I just kind of do what feels good in the moment. I found that a lot of theory crafting, both here and when I played World of Warcraft, is very heavily numbers based off of the perfect target dummy, but with an actual trial and actual boss fights, things are changing around so much that it doesn't always stick true. So before we begin, just a little bit about me. I play Kyra on the Balmung server in the Crystal Data Center. Last week I was, I think, number 10 or something like that out of all of Crystal's red mages. I've probably fallen a few slots since then, but the point is that this is a very high level of play. I've noticed that, the big differences between what I'm going to be doing here and what someone a couple slots above me are doing is just really a little bit of fine tuning, a couple of adjustments here and there, maybe getting in, extra global cooldown here and there. But, the goal of this guide isn't to make you the number one red mage on your data center or anything like that. It's really to just kind of give new red mages the tools necessary to go into a fight, be comfortable with what they're doing with the rotation, and give them an explanation of why they might want to make certain decisions over others. I hope it helps. If not, feel free to blast me in the comments, I guess. But again, this is just supposed to be kind of a fun little experiment to kind of give new players to red mages the tools necessary to get them into a battle. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the fight here. So we'll be doing Titania Extreme here. Titania is a pretty intense fight with a lot of movement, which is why, again, I don't think, the perfect rotation necessarily fits with it. You're going to be moving around a lot, and really managing those off-global cooldowns becomes a very, very big part of it. So for this fight, I'm going to be taking the southeast corner, that puddle down there to our right. And I believe I parsed around 10.2, 10.3k, which, obviously isn't the best. It's not terrible either. I do believe that my dancer had actually forgotten to make me their dance partner for the opening rotation, so that definitely affected that a little bit. I'm sure if they had remembered, I probably would have gotten up to, the 10.5, 10.6 range. I have noticed that if you do want to do this at this kind of level of play, dancers are extremely important. Party makeup in general is very important. You'll notice we don't have a ninja in this party. Obviously, trick attack is still very, very powerful, so having that would probably help out a lot. So here we go with our initial countdown. I obviously start casting around 5 seconds or so. Opening rotations for red mages do change around quite a bit based on whether or not you get any lucky procs with your crits there. Thankfully I did here, so I can go ahead and start getting it into my normal rotation. Now, once we get up to about 40 mana on either side for this initial fight, I actually go ahead and pop both Monification and Embolden. Titania here, as you can see, she's going to do this first Phantom Rune. You do have to get out a little bit. I found that it is very, very tricky to try and build yourself up to 80 mana, use Embolden, and then try and turn around and get a second melee combo in there that quickly. So there you'll notice I displace back to the puddle. That's probably one of the biggest fine-tuning adjustments you could do for this fight, is really optimizing that displacement and your core usage. I typically, as you'll see throughout the fight, I typically hold on to those with this fight, with chains and all kinds of fun stuff like this going on. I typically try saving those to try and get me out, break those chains a little bit faster. You can kind of adjust it how you need, whatever fits your personal play style, but that's what I've found works best for me. So we get in here, get onto our puddles, and go into my next melee combo. I'm trying my best to try and weave in my off-global cooldowns as much as possible and get those extra cores in. As you notice there was a couple chances that I probably could have gotten an extra cast in while I was running back towards Titania, but with the brambles here, I didn't want to risk it too much. This is also another tricky part, trying to get back to the fight if your tank does go back to the corner. I have had a couple of runs where the tank can manage to keep her kind of in the center, or get her back to the center a little bit faster. That can make a pretty big difference on your DPS as well. One thing that you'll notice that's new this expansion that I'm using quite a bit is the Lucid Dreaming. They did lower the cooldown down to 60 seconds. They just lowered the potency for it for a little bit. And for a long fight like this, I think this fight was like 10.5 minutes whenever I go back and look at the logs. You're going to be running through your mana pretty quickly. So Lucid Dreaming is essentially part of our rotation now for a big fight like this. I know some red mages aren't too happy with it, but honestly, it's really not that big of a deal to me. There's plenty of portions throughout fights like this where you're not going to have any other global cooldown to press, so it's perfectly fine to just go ahead and try and get that in as much as possible. I typically pop it around 7,500, 7,000 mana or so. I find that that doesn't waste any extra mana, but it does keep me topped off best as possible. Here, this is another part. Your top red mages probably aren't going to be taking a tether here. It's just less movement to deal with, so you can usually get in an extra cast or two rather than trying to deal with trying to run around and really not necessarily get to the tether. It's really leaving the tether that is the hardest part in maintaining your DPS here. So there we go with another melee combo, and of course she is going to be dropping her Phalite and then her Frost runes here in a bit. This is really a particularly good point to really just kind of pound that DPS as best as possible. With 10k plus, you're really talking about, okay, here we got another chains here. With 10k plus DPS, there's a lot of factors that can go into it. It can be affected by how good your dancer is. Like I said, if you got a ninja or a dragoon in your party, all sorts of little things like that. So there's probably a few fine-tuning adjustments I could have made here to really kind of clean up some of this. But overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how this went. For this, I actually did not stack with the group. That is a strategy I have seen in a couple of groups when it comes to the Frost runes. This group that I've been with here, I'm not part of any static. It's just a pug group, but I've had a couple of these guys before, and they're really solid players. I'm very happy with how everyone performed here. So we decided not to stack for whatever reason. But if your group is comfortable with stacking, does make it a little bit easier to just kind of stay there and DPS her the whole while. So here is really where the trickiest part of this fight starts coming in, because we're going to start getting our adds. This is where positioning and kind of pre-positioning yourself gets to be very, very important. The small adds aren't too big of a deal. Here, depending on where I'm at in my rotation, I can usually fit in an extra melee combo on Mustard Seed here. But it's just a lot of movement. And there is a little bit of RNG involved with it, both in whether or not you get that AoE blast right there, little things like that that can really affect how your rotation goes for this. One of the biggest factors is deciding who to attack when. The common strategy is obviously going to be Mustard Seed, then Puck, then Peace Bloom. But as you'll see here in this next portion, once the big adds come out, depending on where your vines are going to be located, sometimes you might need to switch up, because you will be a little bit closer to Peace Bloom for your melee combo when he grows big here. But for right now, everything's going pretty smoothly. My dancer did go down at one point, which obviously affects the DPS quite a bit as well. So, again, little factors like that, very small fine-tuning adjustments can make a pretty big impact between rankings here. So here's also another part that I usually pop my Lucid Dreaming. Just go ahead and keep that popped off as best as possible, and then get in here and try and get to Mustard Seed as quickly as we can. So for this, I'm at a pretty good point in my rotation and my mana, where I'm not going to have to worry about trying to get in for my melee combo and deal with these AoEs at the same time. Go ahead and use my core here, get back up there for the stack marker, and then I can actually go into my melee combo on Puck. I found that that's actually probably the preferred way you can do it if you can match up your rotation to time with it well enough. Now again, here's the really tricky part, is once you get these finds. As you can see, I'm going to be across the room from both of these guys, so there's going to be a couple of seconds where I don't have a chance to do much DPS because I've got to reposition myself, break those brambles. The big thing with any kind of play like this is not necessarily doing the biggest numbers or getting the highest rankings. For some people that is really important, but my big thing is just being comfortable with the fight, not dying, and getting to the point where you feel like you can farm it regularly. Ultimately, this game is a little bit easier than World of Warcraft at the highest end, but it's still very fun. And really, we're just doing this for glamours and mounts anyways at this point. So, that's the important thing. Get in there, have some fun, find a team that you're really comfortable with, and then you don't have to worry about it. Getting high on the rankings, getting high on the parses, that's just kind of icing on the cake. Something to kind of brag about and make videos like this on. But it doesn't have to be essential to your play style. So here, I'm constantly casting. That's really what you need to be doing with not just Red Mage, but really just about any class. Managing your off-global cooldowns and knowing when to weave in those off-global cooldowns can be a huge part of it. You typically want to save those off-global cooldowns for when you've already got a cast that just finished and everything's on cooldown. You don't have anything else to press. If you aren't doing it very efficiently, what's going to happen is whenever you use an off-global cooldown like a Flesh or something like that, and it's too close to when your normal cooldowns are up, and here we're going to rotate clockwise since the brambles are behind us. What's going to happen is that's going to push back your cast little by little, and again, this is a 10.5 minute fight, so if you keep doing that enough, what's going to happen is that you just you're losing a lot of DPS on cast there. So it's okay to hold stuff like Flesh just a little bit so that you can go ahead and weave it into your rotation rather than just use it outright. So here I'll go ahead and use my Embolden combo here. Thankfully, this portion doesn't have to worry about tethers for a little bit, so I have a little bit of time to just kind of go ham on DPS and start getting into my second melee combo here with a modification. Here we go. And then she is going to be doing another Frost Rune here pretty quickly. I believe I cut it pretty close on this one. That is a pretty big mistake that a lot of new players make, is being afraid to cancel a cast. Again, the most important part with any of these extreme trials is not dying. A dead DPS can't do any DPS, so it's perfectly okay if you've got to cancel a cast and it costs you, 100, 200 DPS. That's okay. The most important part is getting the fight down. So here, yeah. Usually for this portion, I just end up running through her and try going to the other side, or just going to a far edge rather than kind of waiting for everyone else to try and get to where they want. A good group like this can usually adjust on the fly and make space for everyone. I have seen a couple of people and a couple of groups that try just having you stack where you stack for your puddles, and I found that works as long as you are not too far away from it, as long as you can kind of stay center. That's a fairly good strategy to take. So here we go with our next tethers here, and again, this is another portion that can be kind of tricky for red mages. We do have a lot of instant casts and everything, but anytime you're trying to pick up tethers, you're kind of focusing on that, making sure that you're not going to wipe the group, so it does add a little bit of pressure there to it. And I always try and move back a little bit past the marker if I can. Get into a position far enough back where I can get back to DPSing. As you can see, I did lose a global cooldown there, just trying to get out of the way. It happens. It's perfectly okay. And for my final melee combo here, we go ahead and... no, Brambles here, forgot about that. There we go. But for my final melee combo coming up here in a second, I just go ahead and pop both Modification and Embolden. I go ahead and get that out of the way. Kind of lucked out there, as you can kind of see. She had just gone out of range, but thankfully my cast was going to go ahead and go on through. I probably should have got an extra global cooldown there. But yeah, so just go ahead and use it. Anytime she's under 5%, it's not very likely when the whole group's doing this well that she's going to be able to stay around long enough to last for another melee combo there. But yeah, so that is the fight, just kind of giving you a quick overview of what we do for a high-end Savage and Extreme rating. I hope it kind of gave you a little bit of insight. I might make some more of these in the future. If you guys have any requests on what kind of things you would like to see, by all means let me know, and I will try and make adjustments accordingly. But yeah, so there is a quick new player's guide to Red Mage. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one.